Good afternoon, sir. Yes, you can start presenting. We're live on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So today we will go ahead with our lectures on chronic inflammation, and today we will be discussing chronic inflammation. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, sir.
Okay.
Yes, I can see your screen, sir.
But I myself can't see the screen. Can you see it now?
Yes, yes, sir. The presentation I can see.
Okay then. So we begin with chronic inflammation. Actually, it will be the last lecture on inflammation, and on the next day of general pathology, we will be discussing regeneration and repair, that is wound healing. So we will be dealing with these subheadings: the definition, the types of chronic inflammation, the cells involved in chronic inflammation, predominantly the macrophages. We will be discussing something about the giant cells and granulomas. So now what is chronic inflammation? So till now we have dealt with acute inflammation, and now we go on to chronic inflammation, and it is a inflammation of a prolonged duration. Now this term acute and chronic means acute will be of shorter duration, chronic will be of longer duration. Okay, this we had discussed, and the differences, the basic one or two differences we had discussed in our previous lecture classes. So now we will be having more of it. And chronic inflammation, as we have already known, that it is of a prolonged duration in which the inflammation, tissue injury, and attempts at repair coexist in varying combinations. Okay, so simultaneously the inflammation is there, tissue repair and tissue repair is also going on, and that combination along with tissue destruction is basically the uh, morphology of chronic inflammation, or you can say the hallmark of chronic inflammation. It may follow an acute inflammation, or it may even begin insidiously, that on its own it may begin as a low grade smoldering response without any manifestation of a chronic, or without a manifestation of an acute reaction. Okay, so you have to understand that chronic does not always arise from acute inflammation. It may from the very beginning be a chronic inflammation. As we go on into this chapter, we will understand why. And the second, for this second case, we have that in the later is the cause of tissue damage is in the most disabling of the human diseases, that is rheumatoid arthritis, atherosclerosis, tuberculosis, pulmonary fibrosis, and so on. The list is a long list. So these are the names of diseases where we see chronic inflammation, and the inflammation does not begin with acute inflammation in the background. Okay, so these are the examples where chronic inflammation comes directly into the picture without any prelude of acute inflammation. So now what are the causes of chronic inflammation? I will go on one by one, because you see, you have to have a basic understanding of inflammation. Everything is given in the books. I am not taking anything out of the books or something from my own imagination. Everything is available, but what we as uh, teachers do is that we just try to make it in a kind of a small uh, nutshell, so that it is easier for you to have a comprehensive understanding. That is the aim of these short lectures, that we try to give a basic information. On top of it, you will have to read up the books, you can use your internets, and then you can write down the answers. I always tell my students, please write it down. The books have volumes of literature, and you will not be able to comprehend everything if you don't write it down on a on your notebooks. Okay, so causes of chronic inflammation. First is the persistent infections that are difficult to eradicate, and the common examples are mycobacterial infections, fungal infections, and these are called immune reaction because they elicit a type of hypersensitivity, that is delayed type of hypersensitivity reaction, which is also known as granulomatous reaction. We will discuss more of granulomas when we in the coming this in the coming time. So granulomatous reaction, please remember this term, granulomatous reaction. The definition of granuloma we will be coming shortly. Autoimmune diseases. Another group of diseases of chronic inflammation is the autoimmune diseases. What are autoimmune diseases? They are diseases where the body's immune system attacks the body's own tissues. Very funny, but very sad also. Why it is? Because the body's own cells or immune cells, they are attacking body's own tissues. Okay, it is like a like same side goal. Okay, a player who is playing in the one side of the team makes a goal in the same side, so that is the same side goal. And those diseases are very difficult to treat also, because the proper understanding of the disease is still not known completely. Okay, so that is why there are a lot number of diseases under this category. We will discuss in details when we discuss the chapter immunity. So but here just the mention of it is there. So autoimmune diseases, remember, they are one of the most difficult diseases to treat, and the whole branch of rheumatology, we have a DM in rheumatology. So the whole rheumatology, the super specialty division of rheumatology deals with all these autoimmune diseases. So think of the magnanimity of and the implication of these autoimmune diseases. Okay, so a whole DM course is dedicated to the treatment of these autoimmune diseases. Understand? Immune response to allergic diseases. A common example is bronchial asthma, and the beauty of this is that the pattern has a mixture of both acute as well as chronic inflammation. The pattern has both. So acute inflammation is there coexistent with chronic inflammation. Why? Because there are repeated bouts of inflammation. These are called exacerbations of acute inflammation in a chronic setup. Okay, so these are exacerbations. So exacerbation means there is flare up. There is a small infection which is going on in the underlying way, like a stream of river which is slowly flowing. Suddenly there will be some tide. Okay, so it is called acute exacerbation of chronic inflammation. So you have to understand. So they are coexistent. Okay, then comes prolonged exposure to toxic agents. So these are the four basic causes of inflammation. And prolonged exposure to toxic agents, they may be from exogenous agents. Exogenous means something which is outside the body. They may be also endogenous agents, which is part of the body's system. Exogenous agent example is a silica. Silica is an exogenous material, inert material, inactive material. If it is inhaled for a long time, especially the people, workers who are working in mines, silica mines and all that, so they develop a chronic inflammatory lung disease called silicosis. So when we discuss the chapter on environmental pathology, we will be discussing silicosis. We won't discuss it here. So silica leads to silicosis. Okay. So that's an example of exogenous material causing chronic inflammation. Now example of endogenous material causing chronic inflammation, and the example is atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is a very common disease, and that is the uh, major cause of our heart ailments. Okay, all this atherosclerotic heart disease leading to myocardial infarction, leading to all sorts of conditions of heart, that is the high blood pressure and all that, is the main culprit is atherosclerosis, and that is induced partly by the endogenous plasma lipid components. Okay, the lipid components are already there, but whenever there is a change in the ratio of lipids, we have a good lipid, that is high density lipoprotein. We have not so good lipid, that is low density lipoprotein, very low density lipoprotein. So these lipoproteins, if they increase and the ratio changes from good to bad, that is HDL becomes low and LDL and VLDL become more, so then there is propensity towards development of atherosclerosis. Okay, so atherosclerosis is one of the chronic inflammatory diseases which is caused by an endogenous agent, that is plasma lipid. Okay, morphologic features. So we as pathologists, we always see and we are interested to see the actual thing under the microscope. These impressions, that is very important, because that makes you understand the thing which is going on inside the tissue. It is not theory anymore. You have to see, you have to understand. Unless you see the thing, you will never understand. So this is a photomicrograph, okay, of a lung which is showing chronic inflammation, and morphologic features of inflammation will be, first and foremost thing will be mononuclear cell infiltration. So in acute inflammation we saw that acute inflammatory cells, the neutrophils were the most important or the pioneer cells of acute inflammation. Whereas in chronic inflammation, we have macrophages, lymphocytes, plasma cells, and also mast cells and eosinophils, because these two come into the picture of the allergic type of reaction where acute and chronic coexist. Okay, mononuclear cell infiltration. Predominantly, if you say one cell, that is macrophage, and two cells, that is macrophage and lymphocyte. These are the two most important cells of chronic inflammation. Never utter the word neutrophils. Okay. Tissue destruction. Second important point is tissue destruction. So in acute inflammation, we did not see much tissue destruction. There was edema, there was swelling, there was this leakage of uh, tissue fluid from the blood, which escaped into the interstitial space, but tissue destruction as such was not there. Okay, so at the end of everything, at the end of acute inflammation, it was all cleared up by the macrophages and the place became normal. Whereas in chronic inflammation, it is not so always. Why? Because there is tissue destruction, and the tissue destruction is at times repaired by fibrosis. So the normal tissue, suppose epithelial cell was there and it is replaced by fibrosis, the morphology of that area will change. Okay, so very classic example, not related to this, is that if I make a deep cut on the skin of any person, so that skin will never be the same again. That will be replaced by a scar, and the scar will depend on the type of or the depth or the amount of injury which has been caused. If it is a small injury, it will leave a small scar. If it is a very deep injury, it will be leaving an ugly scar. So we have to at times stitch up the scar, stitch up the wound, so that the scar doesn't become ugly. Okay, so that is example of tissue destruction and healing by fibrosis. So fibrosis always uh, fibrosis is basically replacement of the normal tissue by some packing material. So that is the connective tissue basically is kind of a packing material between the epithelial cells, the mesenchymal cells. Now the particular cell type, if it is not being able to be replaced by the stem cells of that particular lineage, then these fibroblasts, they come into play and they just seal up the area, because it cannot be left open. The area has to be ultimately sealed. So if the stem cells can regenerate, if they can replace it by the normal cells, very good. But in many cases of chronic inflammation, that does not happen, because there is a continuous destruction which is going on. So replacement is not sufficient. Okay, so that is why the fibrosis has to take place to replace the damaged area. So in this particular picture, we see these are the alveoli. You see the open spaces, these are the alveolar spaces. Then what are these? These are the lymphocytes, dot 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 lymphocytes. And these are the areas, the interstitial areas, which have been infiltrated by the inflammatory cells. We can see some cells, they are actually the giant cells, and there is also some fibrosis. These small elongated strands of tissue are the fibroblasts, and they are leading to kind of fibrosis of the area. Okay, so this is an example of chronic inflammation. Now coming to the cells of chronic inflammation, you have to understand there are the two important cells, and of these two, the most important cell, if you ask me, is the macrophage. They belong to a system of mononuclear phagocyte system, MPS system, also known as reticuloendothelial system. Okay, so these are all synonymous terms, and cells are derived from two sources with same morphology and function. One source is the blood monocyte, and second source is the tissue macrophage. The source is actually the same. Okay, the source is actually the same, that is they are derived from the same stem cell from the bone marrow, but they go into two lineages. One keeps circulating in the blood as blood monocyte, and the second keeps static in some tissues. So they are known as the tissue macrophages. So we have the 12 examples of tissue macrophages given here. There are more also. So what are they? Number one, macrophages in chronic inflammation. Okay, so macrophages, the main role in macrophage is the generation of some substances or enzymes which will degrade the tissue, that is, they degrade the inflammatory area, and eventually they will phagocytose the dead and the dead particles and remove the dead particles from the site of inflammation. Okay, so that is one role. However, they have another role. They also release some cytokines, chemokines, which attract other inflammatory cells to the area to fight the ongoing inflammation which is going on. So inflammation has been caused due to some infection agent. Some infectious agent has been responsible for some infection, and the macrophage, they try to kind of bring other soldiers into the picture. They try to release some cytokines, chemokines, which attracts other immune cells, that is the lymphocytes, the other macrophages, the neutrophils, so that they can effectively fight the offending agent. Understand? You have to understand, because the understanding is very important. Just memorizing, I have, these are all given in the books. I have always told you, it is not from my memory. It is everything is in the book, but always I try to make it in a palatable way so that you can easily understand and have a better understanding over, have a better grasp over the subject. Okay. Second comes the histiocytes in connective tissue bone marrow. So the histiocytes, they have the same function. Function is the same. No change in function. Macrophages of inflammation, whatever the function they are doing there, the histiocytes also perform the same function. The Kupffer cells of the liver cells, they are their cells which are present in the liver. So they are also the macrophages in the liver. Alveolar macrophages, which are also known as the type 2 pneumocytes, which are in the lungs. So these alveolar macrophages, they at times engulf certain pigments, that is the carbon pigments which we inhale daily, and the pigment laden macrophages, they are present in the lungs. So that by identifying the macrophages, pigment laden macrophages, blackish pigment laden macrophages, we at times identify that this is from the lung. Okay. Tingible body macrophages, they are nothing but macrophages which are present in the germinal center of the lymph node. Why tingible body? Because these macrophages have engulfed certain particles, that is the dead particles which are present in the germinal center of the lymphocytes, and that is why they are known as tingible body macrophages. So macrophages which have engulfed certain material. So some dot material can be seen in the cytoplasm of the macrophage. So that is the example of, that is a tingible body macrophage. So you know the names. The names are important. You may not remember all the names, but at least remember some of the names. They are at times asked in the Viva table. Okay. Littoral cells of splenic sinusoids. In the splenic sinusoids, there are some cells which are known as the littoral cells. They perform the same function as a macrophage of other tissues. Osteoclast in the bone, multinucleated cells in the inside the bone, that those, they have the function of phagocytosis and eroding of the bone when it is needed. Okay. Microglial cells of brain, Langerhans cells. Okay. Again, I am telling you, there are two different things, Langerhans and Langhans. Langhans is a giant cell which is seen in tuberculosis, but Langerhans cell is a dendritic histiocyte of the skin. So please remember the difference between Langhans and Langerhans. Okay, Hofbauer cells of placenta, mesangial cells of glomerulus. All are examples of uh, these macrophages. Okay. I went specifically, I went slow because you have to know the names. I want you to remember the names at least. And somebody when asks you what is a littoral cell of splenic cytosol, don't have to scratch your head. You know it is a macrophage and answer immediately. That is why I went slowly. Okay. Now, role of macrophages in chronic inflammation. As I told you from the very beginning, macrophage is the key player in chronic inflammation, and it arises from a common precursor in bone marrow. So the stem cell leads to formation of a monoblast. Monoblast lead to formation of a macrophage and monocyte. Okay, macrophage resides in the tissue and monocyte circulates in the blood. They perform the action of scavenger cells, and also they are participant in immunity. They are powerful defenders in body's immune system, immune mechanism. Why? Because they release lot of cytokines, chemokines, which are responsible for defending the body from various attacking microorganisms. Okay, virus, bacteria, fungus, and so many other organisms. But there is a catch. But they can also induce considerable tissue destruction when inappropriately activated. Okay, so that is a catch, that if the macrophage is inappropriately activated, that leads to tissue destruction, and tissue destruction is very evident in all the chronic inflammations, and that is the cause of the tissue being scarred, fibrous, and eventually inactive, because a fibrous tissue cannot perform the normal function of that particular tissue. Suppose there is a chronic inflammation or a granulomatous inflammation by tuberculosis in the lung. When it heals by fibrosis, that area cannot perform the action which was being performed by the alveoli, that is the exchange of gases. Okay, so why? Because the pneumocytes are no more there, it is all been replaced by fibroblasts. So that is why this tissue destruction, if it is extensive, so that is not a good thing. So there is a question at times, comment on macrophage is a double-edged sword in the immune system. Okay, so macrophage has a good side, macrophage has a bad side also. So if it is inappropriately activated, it can lead to extensive tissue destruction and eventually fibrosis, which can be counterproductive. Okay, so please remember this comes as a comment on. So the role of macrophages immune system is, actually macrophages have to be activated. So T cells, once a T cell receives certain input, that foreign substance has entered our body, the T cell reacts and becomes activated. Okay, T cell becomes activated and it releases certain cytokines. One of them is interferon gamma, and that interferon gamma activates the tissue macrophages into activated macrophages. Okay, there are some other cytokines also like interleukin 4, which lead to activation of macrophages. Okay, so you have to understand a tissue macrophage was there inside the tissue, but after receiving certain input, that is through cytokine, it becomes active, as if you have given some protein drink and a person has become very powerful. Okay, so that is the way a tissue macrophage which was lying dormant in the tissue suddenly becomes active and it starts releasing certain substances. One of them is the reactive oxygen and nitrogen species are liberated after that macrophage is reacting with those. Okay, it liberates some proteases, collagenases, elastases, which lead to tissue destruction. It also leads itself liberates some cytokines and chemokines, even some coagulation factors and arachidonic acid metabolites. So that we have discussed in the initial inflammation when we were discussing. So all these are the part of or the roles of macrophages. So whenever a short note of macrophage comes, so macrophages at times come as a short note even in the MD examination. So if postgraduate students are here, I am telling you macrophage at times can come as a short note even in postgraduate examination. So that at that time you have to elaborate the actual role of macrophage, how it is formed, and after activation what it performs, what are the roles. So in the first role is the inflammation and tissue injury, second role is the repair. So it produces some growth factor, platelet derived growth factor, fibroblast growth factor, transforming growth factor beta. Okay, some fibrogenic cytokines, angiogenic factors like fibroblast growth factor, and remodeling of, that is known as collagenesis. So collagen, laying down of collagen and fibroblast, and ultimately the repair of tissue is carried out by the action of macrophages. So macrophages are very important, you see. So inflammation and repair both are dependent on macrophages. So you see that was a pictorial description, and here we see we have a list of roles which have been laid down. So phagocytosis, pinocytosis, release of proteases, plasminogen activator, that is the activation of fibrinolytic system. You see, we had already discussed there is a balance and homeostasis always which is present in our body. So whenever the fibrin formation is there, that is a blood clot is formed within a blood vessel. Whenever some injury happens, clot has to form to stop the blood flow, to stop the flowing oozing of blood. Okay, so that clot cannot be there for a longer time because it hinders the circulatory flow. Okay, the blood circulation is necessary because it is the medium through which we exchange the oxygen, we exchange our gaseous substances, that is oxygen, carbon dioxide, we take the nutrients, we release the harmful substances, everything happens through the blood. Okay, so if the blood cannot reach a particular area, all these actions will be stopped and eventually the tissue will die. So we do not want that. So for that, the clot which has formed after a certain time, that clot has to degrade. So there is a fibrinolytic system. We have discussed everything in the previous class also, how all these systems are coordinated together, the fibrinolytic system, the complement system, everything they are coordinated. So plasminogen activator is released by macrophages. Okay, so there are some products of complements which are also released by the action of macrophages, especially C3A, C5A, and some coagulation factors also like factor 5 and thromboplastin, which convert fibrinogen into fibrin. Now fibrin formation itself is by some action of macrophage, and even fibrin breakdown is through some action of macrophage. You see, so all these things are interlinked, and the balance is always is there in our body. If the balance fails, there will be total collapse. So the body's functioning is very, very minutely programmed. It also releases certain cytokines like interleukin 1, tumor necrosis factor alpha, chemokines for leukocytes, metabolites of arachidonic acid, and growth promoting factors like FGF, this fibroblastic growth factor, PDGF, and also the oxygen derived free radicals. That is the reactive oxygen and reactive nitrogen species. Okay, so why I have told you again, I am telling you that they are basically because macrophages play a very, very important role. At times we do not think that whatever macrophage, it has just a role in phagocytosis, comes and eats away and goes away. It's like a scavenger cell. No, it's not only a scavenger cell. It is a scavenger cell, yes, but it is not only a scavenger cell. It performs various activities starting from the blood clotting system, starting from the inflammatory system to tissue repair, regeneration. Everything is dependent on a macrophage. Okay. So this I have already discussed, so I'm not going to go again. So T cell, how they activate and how they help in the activation of macrophage. This will be given in the PDF, so you can see from that. It is the picture is from Robbins. Okay, so you can go and have a look. Now giant cells. So whenever we discuss in chronic inflammation, giant cells are a very important things we have to understand. Why? Because we will see there are many this examples of inflammation. We will see the names of giant cell, different names come up. So you have to have an understanding of giant cells, and giant cells come as a short note in undergraduate examination. That is why I have discussed it separately. So what are giant cells? They are large size cells with one or more nuclei. Actually, the nuclei number can be up to 100 also. So just I have written one or more nuclei, and the usual size of a giant cell is from 40 to 120 micron. Okay, the normal size of RBC is 7 to 8 micron, and A giant cell is 40 to 120 micron, such a large cell. So how the giant cells can be physiological and also inflammatory. So physiological giant cell examples are osteoclast, that is the giant cell present in the bone, trophoblast, giant cell present in the placenta, and megakaryocytes, they are present in the bone marrow. They are the cells from where platelets are derived. You can say they are the mother of platelets. Now, inflammatory giant cell. Chronic inflammation, when a single macrophage fails to deal with the offending agent or the offending particle, they fuse together to form multinucleated giant cell like this. You see, this is this is the picture is from the movie Robot, where we saw Rajnikant. He was playing as the robot, and you see he multiplied to fight the uh, another robot, so that he can overcome that fellow. Okay, so that is how the giant cells. Why I am giving you this example, so that it is easier for you to remember. So they fuse together to form multinucleated giant cells when a single macrophage is unable to fight with the offending agent. One example is a foreign body giant cell, which has a numerous nuclei up to 100 and nuclei scattered throughout the cytoplasm. Okay, foreign body reaction is a common example. In tuberculosis also we can see foreign body giant cell. The bold ones are the example which is most common. Then comes Langhans type of giant cell, not Langerhans. Again, I am telling you, Langhans type of giant cells, where the nuclei are arranged either around the periphery in the form of a horseshoe or ring, or are clustered at two poles of the giant cell. Common example is tuberculosis and sarcoidosis. You see, this is a Langhans type of giant cell. The nuclei are arranged at the periphery like this horseshoe arrangement, or they can be at two poles. Okay, that one was a foreign body giant cell where the nuclei are scattered throughout the cytoplasm. Scattered. Okay. Then comes Pluton giant cell, multinucleated giant cell, usually with a vacuolated cytoplasm due to lipid content. Example is xanthomatous disease like xanthomatous cholecystitis. Okay, so there we see this type of cell, where you see this is the Pluton cell, and these are the this clear round areas. These are the actually the lipids. Okay, lipid cannot be stained, because whenever we try to process the lipid in a tissue, the lipid goes away and leaves a clear space. You can only stain lipid in a frozen section with a special stain like Sudan black or oil red. So these are the stains for lipid, but they can only be stained in a frozen section. But for routine histology, the lipid is washed away and the spaces look like empty spaces. So these are the lipid spaces, and this cell has a floret type of an arrangement. It is called a Pluton giant cell. Okay. Next comes the Ashoff giant cell, which are multinucleated giant cells derived from cardiac histiocyte seen in rheumatic carditis. So these are the examples. Now there are also some tumor giant cells. So previously we were discussing physiological giant cell, then we discussed inflammatory giant cell. Now we have come to tumor giant cell. Now the tumor giant cells look very bizarre. You see, this is a tumor giant cell. Does not resemble any cell. It has all the nuclei. There is the nuclei is in a state of mitosis, and that mitosis is a multipolar mitosis, which we cannot recognize from our normal morphology of mitotic figure. Okay, so first example is anaplastic. Anaplastic, the term anaplasia means very primitive. So anaplastic tumor giant cells where the nuclei are hyperchromatic. Hyperchromatic, the term means the color, the intensity, of the chromatin is very dark, hyper chromatic. Okay, so that is dark in color, and it may vary in size and shape, and formed from the dividing nuclei of the neoplastic cells. Okay, so there should be a gap here. So formed from the dividing nuclei, the neoplastic cells. So these are not macrophages fused. These are not fused macrophages, but they are the tumor themselves which have taken this shape. Okay, examples of these cells can be seen in carcinoma of liver, soft tissue sarcomas. Here, this is an example of a sarcoma where this is a giant cell or a tumor giant cell or an aplastic giant cell. Okay. Then another example of a giant cell of tumor is Reed-Sternberg giant cell. It is also a malignant tumor cell, and it has the shape of as a binucleate cell with a owl-eyed appearance. You see, it looks like a eyes of the owl. There is a prominent nucleoli in the center around which there is a halo, and it is a binucleate cell. At times it looks like mirror image. Okay, so the mirror image nuclei of a Hodgkin lymphoma is a Reed-Sternberg giant cell. In short, we call RS cell. Okay, example Hodgkin lymphoma. It's one of the type of malignant lymphoid neoplasms. There is another type of giant cell which looks like a normal osteoclastic giant cell, but it is actually a reactive giant cell of a tumor called giant cell tumor of bone. Okay, so there is a giant cell tumor of the tendon sheath also, which has got a similar look, but the common example of a giant cell tumor is giant cell tumor of bone. So in this bone tumor, you see these are the osteoclastic type of giant cells, which we have already told you that the osteoclast is normally a physiological type of giant cell, but here in a tumor it resembles an osteoclast, but the area is full of these osteoclastic giant cells which have got 50 to 100 nuclei each. Okay, so each one of them is a giant cell. In the third figure, this is one giant cell, this is another giant cell, this is another giant cell. Each one has got multiple nuclei. Granulomatous inflammation. So you will be asked, if you are dealing with a chronic inflammation, they will say define granuloma. A very common question which is asked on the viva table and also in the theory examination at times is define granuloma. So please remember the definition of granuloma from the book. I have also written it from the book. It is a focus of chronic inflammation consisting of microscopic aggregation of macrophages that are transformed into epithelioid cells. Mind you, the spelling of epithelioids. Many students, they write a wrong spelling. Many students write THE, LIOD, something, but it is LIOID, epithelioid. Okay, so this spelling is very important. Epithelioid, THELIOID. So epithelioid cells surrounded by a collar of lymphocytes and a peripheral rim of fibroblasts. So now fibroblasts may or may not be there, because if it is a fresh granuloma, fibroblasts may not be there. So if it is an old granuloma, the stage of healing has already started. So you will be seeing a rim of fibroblast. Okay, so please remember this definition. You have to draw a diagram of granuloma also, so that you will please practice a hand drawn diagram of granuloma. So here what I am showing you, this area, can you see the cursor? This area, central area, is the area of necrosis. This is an example of tuberculous granuloma. So where we do see a central caseous necrosis. Okay, so we had discussed about the types of necrosis, and one example was caseous necrosis. So this is caseous necrosis, cheese like caseous. necrosis, which is surrounded by the epithelioid cells. So epithelioid cells are slipper shaped. They have the shape of a slipper. You remember we had some organism called paramecium which had a slipper shape. So here also the epithelioid cell has a slipper shaped epithelioid. Why oid? Because the cell resembles an epithelium, that is epithelial cell. So that epithelium cell resemblance with the epithelium cell has made it into a epithelioid cell, but it has nothing to do with epithelium. It is basically a macrophage. Okay, epithelioid cell is nothing but a macrophage. Okay, so around this necrotic area, that is the central necrotic area, we have these elongated cells. You please draw a diagram on your notebook. This is a photomicrograph. You may not be able to understand properly, but always draw a good diagram. You show a central area of necrosis around which you draw slipper shaped elongated epithelioid cells. Around that you draw this type of multinucleated Langhans type of giant cells where the nuclei are arranged in a horseshoe type of arrangement. Okay, these are Langhans type of giant cells, and there is a collar of dot cells. These are the lymphocytes. At times you may see some plasma cells also, and the outer rim which is missing here because it is a fresh granuloma is a fibroblast. You draw that also because that will make the diagram complete. And always please label the diagram. That is, you have to make an arrow, write necrosis, make an arrow, write Langhans giant cell, make an arrow, write a lymphoid cell or lymphocyte. Okay, and finally fibroblast. Always practice drawing diagram on your own. Okay, so granulomas can be basically, so whenever you are asked about a short note of write a short note on granuloma, you will have to write down. First you will have to define what is a granuloma, then you will have to describe what are the morphological features of a granuloma which we just discussed. Then you have to write the types of granuloma. You can write this also first, there is no harm, but you have to write the contents are important. So basically we have two types of granuloma which differ in their pathogenesis. One is the foreign body or the non-immune granulomas. Second are the immune granulomas which are in which are caused by a variety of agents. Most important agents are the microbial agents. Okay, so foreign body granulomas, the non-immune granulomas, are incited by a relatively inert foreign substance such as talc. Talc at times is seen in some patients who are actually drug addicts, who are used to intravenous drug abuse. So those patients and in those persons, we see talc which has gone inside the tissue. There can be suture material. So normally silk sutures, after the stitching is done, they are supposed to be removed after 7 to 10 days. Okay, but if while removing a part of the suture material remains in the tissue, so that leads to a foreign body reaction. The body tries to remove the tissue but is unable to. So in that case, there are multiple giant cells which surround that foreign body, that is the suture material, and leads to does not lead to an inflammatory reaction, but it is basically the foreign substance, foreign body is being engulfed by the macrophages. At times they are able to engulf it and throw it out of the system. At times they are not. In most cases actually they cannot. So that is why these giant cells, they come together, they try to fight it out, but eventually it leads to a swelling of the area due to accumulation of these giant cells. Understand? And under the microscope, which we can actually see the refractile foreign material, especially if you can use a polarizer. So polarized microscope gives it a better impression, which is identified at the center of the granuloma. Okay, then comes the immune granuloma, the most important ones actually. foreign granulomas are important, but immune granulomas are the ones which are the most important because they are the inflammatory granulomas. And the immune granulomas, the inciting agent is a poorly degradable or a particulate microorganism. The common example or the commonest example is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So tuberculosis, that particular disease, you have to know by heart. You have to know by heart because this granulomatous disease, this disease starts and infects almost all the organs of the body. You can name any organ, it is there. Starting from the brain and the meninges, it can be seen in the eye, it can be seen in the throat, it can be seen in the thyroid, in the heart, everywhere. Initially it was to be think that some organs are spared, but nowadays almost everywhere it is found. It has been found in the breast, it has been found in testes, ovaries, endometrium, everywhere, bones, kidneys. So please remember tuberculosis, and the beauty of tuberculosis is that for you is that it is same everywhere. So you know one tuberculosis, you will be able to write all the tuberculosis. Minor differences of course are there, but the granuloma is the same, the diagrams remain the same, and it is if you understand one TB fully, you can write any question of tuberculosis in any exam. Okay, and tuberculosis, mind you, is important not only in pathology, it is equally important in microbiology, equally important in pharmacology, equally important in community medicine, medicine, chest medicine, everywhere. Not surgery, of course, but in medical practice, especially in a country like India, where tuberculosis is still one of the most important killer disease. HIV is not that important compared to the death we have due to tuberculosis. Okay, so even the HIV patients eventually get infected by tuberculosis and they die because that becomes resistant. Multi-drug resistant tuberculosis comes up. Okay, so why I am repeating this? Because the tuberculosis is a example of chronic granulomatous disease. So what happens is that the antigen or the peptide is presented to the specific T lymphocyte and leads to their activation. The responding T lymphocyte produces cytokines such as interleukin 2, which activates other T cells, perpetuating the response, and interferon gamma, which helps in activating macrophages and transforming them into epithelioid cells. Here, so T cells become active, release TNF, interleukin 17 and other chemokines, recruitment of macrophages, and this interferon gamma that leads to the activation of macrophages, and activated macrophages release TNF alpha and interleukin 1. Okay, so uh, eventually these activated macrophages are transformed into epithelioid cells. The macrophages themselves are transformed into epithelioid cells, and the epithelioid cells, they fuse together to form multinucleated giant cell. And the prototype of immune granuloma, as I have already discussed, is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is an example of caseating or necrotizing granuloma. So one example, there are two types of granulomas. One is the non-immune granuloma, one is the immune granuloma. Of the immune granuloma, we have again two subtypes, that is one with caseous necrosis and one without necrosis, caseous necrosis. Without necrosis, the common example is Crohn's disease. Okay, Crohn's disease and sarcoidosis. So these are examples of non-caseating granulomas. Understand? So please remember, if you have to write a short note, you have to discuss all these things and give examples. Please remember the examples. So I have already discussed this. This diagram is actually from Harsh Mohan. So basically, what happens is that whenever the foreign body here, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, enters, the macrophages try to attack it after being activated by the T cells, but they cannot digest it because Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a very powerful bacteria, and it leads to some weak inflammatory response. Macrophages try to engulf them, but the tuberculous agent persists. It is not killed, and hence there is a T cell mediated immune response and leads to activation of CD4 plus T cells with release of lymphokines, interleukin 1, interleukin 2, growth factors, interferon gamma, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Okay, so that leads to more accumulation of tissue macrophages and activation of tissue macrophages with the increased recruitment from the circulation, and proliferation of T cells keep on happening, and these activated macrophages which have been activated by interferon gamma are transformed into epithelioid cells. The same are transformed into the giant cells, and secretion of the fibroblastic proliferation, that FGF, TGF beta, PDGF, which leads to fibrosis. That is, the granuloma is surrounded by a rim of fibroblast. That is, the repair starts happening when the granuloma becomes older. Initially this part is not there, initially only this part is there, but later on, when the granuloma becomes older, the fibroblastic proliferation starts happening, so it is surrounded by a rim of fibroblast. So these are the examples of disease by fibroblast. Granuloma, we have uh, various divisions, like in Harsh Mohan, they have divided into granulomatous inflammation caused by bacteria. The examples are tuberculosis, leprosy, syphilis, and cat scratch disease. We have the granuloma caused by foreign body, that is a foreign body granuloma, we have discussed it. We have granulomas caused by fungal agents, that is blastomycosis and histoplasmosis. These are the granulomas caused by a fungal agent. Okay, we have granulomas caused by uh, parasite, schistosomiasis. Okay, so these are examples. You can go back and read if you have Harshmon. So the chart is a big chart. I have not given that chart, but just for you to have an understanding, I have given these examples which are from this is actually from Robbins. So you have to, whenever they ask you examples, you have to name the disease, you have to name the causative organisms. Tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis; leprosy, Mycobacterium lepri; syphilis, Treponema pallidum. So, and what are the things which are seen in each one of them. Okay, mostly they have similarity. If the disease is related to immune granuloma, that will have some similarity. If it is a non-immune like foreign body, it will have, the foreign body will be different, but the foreign body granulomas, all foreign body granulomas will be similar. Understand? So please try to remember few names from each category. From that bacterial category, which we have the maximum number, that is tuberculosis, leprosy, very important. Second, fungal category, histoplasmosis, blastomycosis, and parasitic schistosomiasis. The unknown etiology, sarcoidosis, here it is there, sarcoidosis, the etiology is actually unknown. And we have there is granuloma in rheumatic fever. Okay, so rheumatic fever, there is a granuloma. We have granuloma in this foreign body. So these are the examples of granulomatous inflammation. We are almost coming to an end. I think I know that the time is up, but just a few more slides, one or two more slides. So systemic effects of chronic inflammation. There will be fever, and fever is often associated with weight loss and weakness, which is one of the important signs of in tuberculosis. Anemia may be there of varying degree, leukocytosis, but leukocytosis is not due to neutrophil increase but due to lymphocytes. So there is relative lymphocytosis. ESR is elevated. At times it reaches 100 milligrams per deciliter. At times it reaches 200 milligrams per deciliter. So this is the Please remember, number one, the role of macrophages. Number two, giant cells. Number three, granulomas. So the most important lesson for today is the role of macrophages, granulomas, and if you read granuloma, granuloma will definitely lead you to giant cells. So giant cells, granulomas, they are closely related, and macrophage, granulomas, giant cells are actually interrelated. So one cannot be separate from the other. Understand? So thank you so much. I have finished my lecture. If you have any doubts or queries regarding this topic or any other topic of general pathology, I will be happy to answer. You can write it in the group and I will be happy to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Palash. Excellent lecture, and indeed, the central point of all chronic inflammation is macrophage. It is the most essential cell, and we need to understand how the macrophage tries to take care of the foreign body, and when it is not able to contain the foreign body, it has this giant cell reaction and then the granulomatous formation. And you have very correctly, very nicely put it for everybody to understand. Thank you so much, Dr. Palash. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.